We dragon goddesses can only raise one beast man in our lifetime. When I was young, my sister and I each chose our own beast men. Those sparkling eyes of the little wolf made me choose him, yet this became the very reason he hated me to the core, because what he truly wanted was my sister. Later, when my sister was attacked by the Snake King, he pushed me into its gaping maw. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day of choosing the beast men. The little wolf, covered in wounds, whimpered as it looked at me. I casually pointed at the beautiful fox demon nearby. I want this one, pretty. The little wolf struggled to grab my sleeve. I'm your beast man. In the Dragon-Snake War, our clan showed formidable strength, forcing the snake tribe into retreat. Lola sneaked out to battle the Snake King. As she spat blood, the Snake King opened its gaping maw. A sudden force from behind pushed me right before the Snake King's eyes. I turned around. Edward and my sister's werewolf both rushed toward her. As consciousness faded, I seemed to catch a glimpse of remorse in Edward's eyes. Only then did I realize that what Edward had always wanted was my sister. When I opened my eyes again, there was no terrifying blood-stained maw. I was lying on my own pearwood bed. Sister, you choose the beast man first. Lola tilted her head playfully, a sweet smile on her lips. According to clan rules, a dragon maiden can only raise one beast man in her lifetime and cannot change midway. Thus, for a dragon maiden, a beast man is a friend, a comrade in arms, or even a lover. The moment they are bound, a life and death contract is signed. Today is the day we choose the orcs. The open market is bustling with activity. Among them, the handsome and aloof Edward is placed in the most prominent position, even though he is covered in scars, with half a claw mark on his face. He still evokes a sense of pity and affection. When he saw me in the crowd, his eyes filled with grievance, the little wolf whimpering softly. Lola followed my gaze and smiled innocently. Sister, do you want that little wolf? He seems to really like you. I had always thought Lola was innocent, defending her at home in every way, always standing in front of her, but in reality, I was the one being used. Lola was the child my father found by the river, and I was the only one who treated her with unreserved kindness. But what she wanted was far more than I had imagined, so she always stood behind me with a smile, playing the role of the victim. My gaze fell on Edward's legs, and he turned them away unnaturally. He had a leg ailment. In my previous life, I searched everywhere for renowned physicians and fed him countless elixirs to cure him. Now his legs were half crippled, his lower limbs like empty, terrifying scaffolds. I don't like cripples. Edward's gaze held both embarrassment and disbelief as he looked at me. Lola stared at me in shock. I had always been proper and never one to create awkward situations for everyone. Without saying a word, she turned around to select her own war creature. Most of the high-quality war creatures on the platform had already been chosen. Edward rejected the adoption offers from 4 or 5 demon saintesses in a row, his eyes burning with fervor as he gazed at me, as if looking at a long-lost treasure. I sneered inwardly. Could it be that he had also been reborn? Edward had never looked at me like this before. There weren't many beast men left on the stage now, and Lola picked a majestic tiger. Sister, haven't you made up your mind yet? The platform wasn't large, and after most of the beast men were taken away, I spotted that sickly little fox. He didn't even have the strength to maintain his human form, with white fur still visible on his face, long hair cascading over his shoulders, a peerless beauty. He was nothing like the young fox general I had seen in my past life, who alone could hold off an entire snake army and was my father's most capable commander. In my previous life, the person who adopted him wanted to sell him to a brothel because of his unparalleled beauty. I don't know how he escaped, but later, his appearance seemed to have changed somewhat. I raised my hand, and Edward couldn't contain his excitement. Gazing at me with deep affection, my gaze fell on the little fox behind him, and my finger pointed slightly off. I want this one, it's beautiful. The little fox slowly lifted its eyelids, looking at me in disbelief. I looked at Edward, whose neck had turned red, and said softly, besides, this one seems quite loyal. Edward lowered his eyelids. I've already changed. I chuckled lightly and walked toward the little fox in the corner. Gabriel seemed eager to present his best side, struggling to make the exposed fur on his body appear smoother. As the spiritual energy circulated, Gabriel grew even more exhausted. He coughed lightly, and a trace of blood stained his white fur. The plan backfired. In a panic, he covered the crimson stain with his hand. Foxes were the weakest in combat among the beast men, though they belonged to the canine family. They lacked the endearing charm of dogs and couldn't compare to the majestic tigers or wolves. The fox tribe only had their seductive arts to rely on. The white fox was originally the most noble species among the fox clans, but as their power waned, the strikingly beautiful white foxes gradually became trade commodities among the various fox tribes. I reached out and stroked his head. Do you want the White Fox clan to regain its former glory? Gabriel froze for a moment, then nodded, shedding his previous coquettish demeanor as a glint of determination flashed in his eyes. I took the key from the boss and opened the door. Gabriel was unwilling to transform into his original form, and I could see fine beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Every step he took seemed agonizing. Edward grew impatient. What use is he besides being good-looking? There's no way a mere fox could accomplish what I can do for you. Gabriel halted abruptly, his body stiffening, his head hung even lower. Not daring to look at me again, I tilted my head to look at Edward. He was indeed impressive, possessing both the ferocity and cunning of a wolf, but in my past life, everything I wanted, I obtained through my own efforts. All his talents were devoted to Lola. Once unfaithful, never trusted again. Besides, he could kill me for Lola's sake, but Gabriel probably couldn't bring himself to do that. Lowering my gaze, I looked at his leg. What can a cripple like you do for me? Help me consume ancient spiritual herbs. The sorrow in Edward's eyes was undisguised, with a light scoff. I took Gabriel's hand and walked away. As I was about to leave, I saw the person who had bought Gabriel in my previous life. Her gaze lingered on Gabriel for just a moment before quickly shifting to Edward. Someone like Edward, with both combat prowess and good looks, was naturally more popular. However, their attitude toward beastmen was nothing like ours, the dragonkin. To them, beastmen were merely slaves. Edward has always been arrogant, and in my past life, I gave him all the respect he could ask for. At this thought, the corners of my lips curled up slightly. Sister, why did you choose the White Fox? Father went through so much trouble, and you're supposed to be the future saintess of our dragon clan. Lola's voice was neither too loud nor too soft, just enough for father to hear. Hearing this, my father turned his gaze to the White Fox by my side. Weak as a fading breath, he could barely stand at this moment. Leaning heavily against my shoulder, my father's brow furrowed tightly, uttering only a few words. No ambition at all. Every priestess of the dragon clan must choose a beastman as her subordinate upon coming of age. No one wishes to bring a useless beastman into future battles. The saintess is the elite among priestesses, chosen from thousands. Only the strongest dragon can be called the saintess. I was exceptionally talented from a young age, and my father had high hopes for me. Change it. Even your younger sister knows to choose someone with greater strength. Gabriel's head sank as if pulled to the earth's core, and I could feel his breathing grow noticeably heavier. I want him. Father gave me a deep look and said solemnly, if you don't want to be the saintess, there are others who will. Father turned and left with a flick of his sleeve. Lola suppressed the excitement in her eyes and said, Sister, you should still apologize to father. After all, Lola, if you want something, fight for it yourself. There's no need to put on an act in front of me. She froze for a moment. I had always yielded to her before and never spoken back. I held Gabriel's hand and slowly walked away. Gabriel, his face full of guilt, finally stammered in my room, without signing the contract. The divine maiden should choose someone else. I glanced at him, my gaze falling on his tightly clasped hands. Others may have forgotten, but have you forgotten too? The White Fox clan has declined. Must we really resort to using our looks to please others? The White Fox clan was originally renowned for their martial prowess, being the most talented and powerful among fox spirits. Unfortunately, white foxes were warlike and paid little attention to reproduction, leading to their rapid decline. Soon, they were besieged by the other fox clans, becoming mere bargaining chips in the dealings between the various fox tribes. Gabriel clenched his fists tightly, his spiritual energy was unstable, and as his anger flared, white fur began to sprout on his hands. The fury in his eyes faded, replaced by a look of confusion as he stared at me, as if at any moment, I would start lashing him with scornful disdain. Goddess, in my past life, Edward never addressed me as Goddess, he always called me by my name directly. Moreover, most of the time, his attitude toward me was arrogant. I thought it was just the cold nature of werewolves, but I never expected he was only cold toward me. I had seen him smile like a sky full of stars, but only in front of Lola. At that time, Lola and I returned from training together. Lola had brought small gifts for him and his beast folk. Just a tiny sugar figurine was enough to make his eyes crinkle with joy. Yet the ancient elixir I risked my life to retrieve for him earned nothing but his icy glare. I held Gabriel's hand and said, compared to appearance, the ability to silence others' gossip is far more important. Gabriel's eyes brimmed with unbridled ambition. he somewhat resembles the young general I saw in my past life. The White Fox clan is born with powerful spiritual energy. To prevent them from seeking revenge, other fox clans simply force them to take medicine that dissipates their spiritual energy. My spiritual energy flowed through his body, a vessel with shattered meridians. A damaged belly, utterly incapable of gathering air, Gabriel stepped back awkwardly, his face slightly flushed, his lips pressed together as if struggling to endure something. I frowned as I looked at Gabriel before me. Just seeing his constitution filled me with despair. I truly didn't know how he managed it in my past life. No wonder, back then, he never used his spiritual power, relying solely on swordsmanship. He withdrew his hand and turned his face away, the tips of his ears slightly red. "I've had this constitution since birth," he said, his voice grew quieter, his hands unconsciously clasping together. "There is a spiritual herb in the West Sea that can revive the dead and heal withered bones." Gabriel looked at me in disbelief. The West Sea was extremely perilous, and many had ventured there seeking the chance for eternal life. Yet to this day, no one had ever returned alive from the West Sea. In my past life, I had made that journey, barely surviving to bring back the spiritual herb for Edward. His leg was completely restored in less than a day. I never expected his gratitude, but I didn't even receive so much as a glance in return. "You don't need to take risks, goddess, I can train on my own. Without spiritual power, I'll rely on myself." His eyes shone brightly, filled with determination. "I'll never disgrace you." Of course he could do it. I knew he had the ability. "We are now bound by contract, you can choose to rely on yourself. But I need a stronger partner." Gabriel lowered his eyelids, staring at his toes as if deep in thought. "So on the day I set out for West Sea," Gabriel silently followed behind me. "It's not that I didn't want him to come. West Sea is extremely dangerous, and in his current condition, forget about helping me, even self-preservation would be difficult for him." "Go back." Gabriel pursed his lips. As if having made some kind of resolution, he took out a small box and opened it in front of me. The box was delicate and beautiful, containing a murky pill inside. "Master, I once heard that white foxes are proud. Even when their dignity is trampled upon, they would not easily submit." Gabriel's gentle voice sounded. "Master, for you." I picked it up and saw that it was actually a turbid origin pill. It could actively heal wounds and regenerate flesh within 2 hours, and no matter what the circumstances, I will always maintain my own clarity of mind. The West Sea is full of countless illusions, and this is indeed something I truly need. In my past life, I suffered because of this and ultimately had to pull out my scales just to stay clear-headed. Thinking again of Edward's icy demeanor, my heart began to ache once more. In the end, Gabriel still followed me to the West Sea. I just didn't expect to see Edward here. At this moment, he stood leisurely at the entrance, and a trace of affection flashed in his indifferent eyes when he saw me. In my previous life, I would never have imagined that this cold little wolf would one day remain devoted to me. "Sister, my heart hurts a little." Gabriel clutched the delicate little box in his hand, the veins on his arm bulging, sweat beading on his forehead, his already pale face turned even ghastlier. I turned to look at Gabriel and quickly helped him walk toward the nearby stone steps. As I got closer, I heard Gabriel whisper softly in my ear, "Sister, I don't like him." I let out a light chuckle and was about to turn my head when Gabriel shifted sideways, blocking my view. "He's not a good person." I froze. Even Gabriel, who had little contact with him, knew Edward was no good, yet it took me a life to see it clearly. Boom! The water surface split wide open, the West Sea naturally parting to form a gap. Without a second thought, I rushed in. Gabriel followed closely behind, and Edward along with his current master also descended into the water. The West Sea naturally splits apart once every month, and no living creature sucked into it has ever emerged. Located in a remote area with rampant demonic energy, the creatures in this region are far more ferocious than those outside. Thus, when the giant fish before us became demonized, Edward appeared beside me alongside Gabriel. Edward waved his hand, slaying the creatures around me one by one. He cast a silent glance at Gabriel before turning to me, his eyes filled with nothing but grievance and longing. "Nancy, I'm clearly more useful than him." Gabriel pushed Edward aside with one hand, casting a cold glance to the side. "Your master is injured. If you can't even protect your own master, how can you claim to be useful?" Edward was about to retaliate when his master shrieked. "Edward, are you blind?" Edward frowned impatiently, his look of annoyance identical to that of his past life. He truly is a cold-blooded person. No matter how well you treat him, Edward won't respond in the slightest. He might even think all of this is something he inherently deserves. He glanced at me but still turned and walked away. Nancy, I will always protect you. Edward's deep voice used to be something I loved. But now hearing him speak fills me with nothing but annoyance and even a sense of absurdity. Gabriel stepped in front of me, blocking Edward's line of sight, so all I could see was Edward's master, who was also Gabriel's master in my past life. She is from the Serpent clan, Sarah. She was notoriously hot-tempered, and no fewer than 10 orcs had lost their lives under her command. In her previous life, she had tortured Gabriel half to death before sending him to the pleasure district. Logically, Edward should have known about this, because I remember in my past life, it was Lola who told me the story, with Edward present at the time, yet he still chose Sarah. I'm a bit puzzled, unsure of what he's really trying to do, but I have no intention of continuing to engage with him. There's only one spirit herb, and it's clear that both Edward and Sarah are after it. I grabbed Gabriel's hand and leaped into the abyss. I had been here once before, though I didn't remember everything perfectly. I still managed to avoid most of the fights. The spirit herb was deep in the West Sea. Following my memory, I searched all the way there. Amidst a pile of seaweed, that spiritual herb bloomed with an unusually bewitching radiance. Found it. I turned my head and saw that Sarah had actually followed us all the way here. Edward stared at the spiritual herb with a dazed expression, his eyes filled with ambition. Just as he stepped forward, Gabriel blocked his path. Edward didn't look at him, but his gaze fell on me, full of tenderness. Nancy, I know you were trying to find medicine for me. Sarah also brought me here to cure me. Nancy, once I take the spirit herb, I'll be able to protect you properly. While Gabriel was stopping Edward, I swiftly moved forward and plucked the spirit herb. Sarah's eyes lit up. So you're also doing this for Edward? Then give it to us. As long as he eats this miraculous herb, his leg will be healed. I suddenly smiled and signaled Gabriel to stand by my side. He glanced warily at Edward but ultimately released him at my silent urging. Edward's face showed a tenderness I'd never seen before as he murmured, Nancy, you've worked hard. With that, his gaze fell upon my hands. The spiritual herb glowed faintly, still appearing vibrant even after being plucked. He reached out to snatch it, but I tightened my grip and took 2 steps back. Give it to you, after I nearly lost my life to obtain this. You still think you can just reap the benefits? I quickly threw the spirit herb to Gabriel. Upon contact with him, it swiftly reacted, transforming into strands of spiritual energy that entered his body. The tenderness on Edward's face finally shattered as he growled, What are you doing? This is my only chance to cure my leg. He glared darkly at Gabriel. He's just a useless fox who can't even gather energy. What use does he have for this spirit herb? As soon as the words fell, his hand reached out, intending to kill Gabriel and retrieve the spirit herb. Before I could react, Gabriel kicked Edward away, sending him flying far off. Sarah's expression also darkened. She glared viciously at Gabriel. Spit out the spirit herb. I stepped forward and dissolved her power. Sarah, struck by the backlash of her own energy, spat a mouthful of blood onto the ground. Still trying to touch my people? Too bad. You don't have the ability now. Sarah looked at me defiantly, while Edward clutched his chest and said, How did you become like this? Nancy, you weren't like this before. I pursed my lips slightly, then turned and left, pulling Gabriel along with me. After a moment's thought, I finally added, The depths of the West Sea imprison an ancient divine beast. Enjoy your stay. With that, I turned to leave. Gabriel's spiritual power had improved by leaps and bounds, so I didn't have to exert much effort to get out. The entrance gradually narrowed, but just then, a raging storm of waves erupted from the seabed. The ancient divine beast is about to emerge. In my past life, after obtaining the spirit herb, I didn't find the exit immediately and ended up stranded at the bottom of the sea. Far from being a match for that divine beast, with a determination to fight to the death, I barely escaped with half my life gone. Gabriel's hand grew warm as he tightly clasped mine. Sister, let's go home. The spiritual energy changes in beast men are very noticeable. The previous Gabriel looked like a delicate, sickly beauty, but now, brimming with spiritual energy, even the hem of his skirt fluttered with vigor. As soon as I got home, Lola came over. When she saw Gabriel beside me, a flash of malice flickered in her eyes, but she quickly suppressed it, maintaining her innocent facade. Sis, your beast man seems to have gotten stronger. So impressive, as expected of someone you chose. I brushed past her without a word, and Gabriel followed suit. Lips pressed tightly together as he sidestepped past her. Lola suddenly let out a cold laugh. You knew all along, didn't you? Her voice dropped low, the sweet tone vanishing completely. as if finally releasing years of pent-up resentment, she began to speak incessantly. "Nancy, aren't you just relying on your natural talent? I can't stand your hypocritical act. Don't you just want to keep me beneath you forever? All these years, you've been doling out your petty favors, thinking you're being magnanimous. Do you really think I should be grateful to you?" She glared at me with hatred. "I won't. I hate you to death. I'm not a beggar. I don't want your charity." Looking at this person filled with resentment, I could hardly connect her to the one who used to sweetly call me sister behind me. Lola was born with a damaged spiritual root. It was I who begged my father to treat her, pouring vast amounts of spiritual medicine into her, just to barely stabilize her spiritual root. We dragons revere strength, so the weak will be bullied. Time and again I stood in front of Lola, never imagining that in the end, the one she would hate would be me. I didn't linger, nor did I want to hear any more about how much Lola despised me. Only after returning to my room did I suddenly remember something. In my past life, I accidentally discovered that Lola had mastered a forbidden technique that could make someone fall in love with her in a very short time, somewhat similar to the Fox clan's charm magic. At that time, the cunning in her eyes only made me relieved, because in a world where the strong prey on the weak, there was no need for naive innocence. I was glad she had finally awakened. Looking back now, I was a complete fool. "Sister, is Lola your biological sister?" I tilted my head to look at Gabriel. After consuming the spirit herb, he had already transformed into a different person. The sickly pallor on his face had faded, and his eyes, no longer the same, now held a newfound determination. Seeing that I remained silent, he spoke on his own. "Sister, her scent feels familiar, yet somehow different." I remembered when Lola had just returned home. Back then, she was covered in filth, as if she had been soaking in a pile of garbage. Back then, she always carried a certain scent, though I hadn't realized it before. The day I brought Gabriel back, I caught the same scent on him. It was a faint trace of Fox, but afterward, I never smelled it on her again. I gazed thoughtfully at Gabriel, and before long, the tips of his ears turned slightly red. "I'll go out to practice first." His retreating figure exuded a sense of fluster. The days that followed were uneventful, yet tinged with a hint of tension. I finally understood why Lola turned against me in this life. Her orc Grant was even more terrifying than in the previous life. When I saw Grant, he was devouring the fish I had raised for a long time. Gabriel and I had developed a strong rapport over the past few days. Just a glance from me, and he would act. Let go. Gabriel's hand chop knocked the fish away, and the startled fish quickly swam off, disappearing from sight. Grant's gaze was as if he was looking at food. He growled lowly, baring his fangs slightly, exuding sheer killing intent. He moved so fast that I could barely keep track of his figure. Gabriel held me and flew away with me, but Grant wasn't ready to let it end there. He blocked our path, determined to settle the score once and for all. Lola's laughter rang out behind us. "Sis, I'd love to help you, but Grant's in a bad mood right now. He won't even listen to me." I snorted coldly. Lola was really full of herself, having lived 2 lives. "The only thing I don't need to feel inferior about is my strength." Just as I was about to strike, Gabriel pressed down on my hand, his gentle voice whispering in my ear, "Sister, let me." How could the hands of a goddess be stained with such disgusting blood? The suppressed excitement in Gabriel's eyes made me want to laugh. It seemed his recent reclusive lifestyle had left him pent up. I nodded lightly, just in time to see what Gabriel had achieved during this period of training. Rationality had left Grant's eyes, and his attacks came swift and deadly, each move a killing strike. Gabriel showed not a trace of panic, even finding time to reassure me. My light chuckle only stoked the raging fire of fury on Grant's face. Grant suddenly rushed forward and threw a heavy punch, but Gabriel swiftly dodged and lightly stepped on Grant's hand. He flashed a bright smile, while Grant's face gradually turned red with frustration. "How could you let your werewolf kill someone?" Lola shielded Grant behind her, glaring fiercely at Gabriel. Her eyes quickly welled up with tears. "Sister, Grant didn't know. I apologize on his behalf. It's all my fault." The cold voice from behind made me understand the reason for Lola's change. "What are you doing?" Father shouted coldly. Lola's tears kept falling as if the whole world had wronged her. "Father, it's all my fault. I failed to keep an eye on Grant." Father's face darkened, his gaze sweeping heavily over my face before finally settling on Gabriel. "The battle is imminent, yet you're still arguing here. I think this fox has bewitched you." With a grim expression, he said, "Tomorrow, you'll all fight alongside me. I don't keep useless people." Father stormed off, and Lola seemed taken aback by his unexpected attitude. A flash of unwillingness crossed her eyes. But it was soon overshadowed by her ambition. Glancing at Gabriel, she sneered, "Sister, I'll let you have this one today." She led Grant away, and I watched the little fish in the pond with some emotion. It was the first life I had ever saved, but unfortunately, her spirit was severely damaged, and now only a fragment of her soul remained within that small fish. The waters of the rebirth pool nurtured her, making her the fish that had stayed with me the longest. "Lucky we came early, any later and you'd really be gone." The little fish seemed to understand, bubbling glug glug. I chuckled softly, remembering how this person would act when spoiled, then shook my head and left. I thought I'd never see Edward again. When he appeared at the battlefront, I was still somewhat surprised. Edward's legs remained empty, yet by some means, he had regained complete freedom of movement, no longer limping. The tenderness in his eyes had turned to resentment, or perhaps hatred. "Nancy, I loved you so much. Just wanted a single glance from you, but what did you give me?" He furrowed his brows, looking every bit the deeply devoted lover with a broken heart. "Yet your eyes are only for that seductive creature, and you even gave him the spirit herb." He seemed to have found a foothold, finally able to accuse me with justification. "I used to think you truly loved me, but I never imagined you'd become like this. You don't deserve anyone's genuine affection at all." I glanced at Gabriel, who swiftly kicked the man to the ground and looked down at Edward with disdain. "Your legs may be crippled, but your mouth isn't. The filth you spew is truly foul." I watched silently as Gabriel's actions greatly boosted morale, while the already disadvantaged Snake clan retreated in defeat. I saw Sarah, her face dark with anger, helping Edward back to their camp. "Gabriel is truly impressive. In just one day, he managed to change my father's opinion of him." Even when looking at me, my father wasn't as angry anymore. Perhaps my gaze was too direct, as Gabriel's ears turned red involuntarily. "Nancy," when he called me by my nickname, his eyes gazed at me eagerly without the slightest hesitation. Gabriel was truly beautiful, with captivating eyes beneath long lashes and a tiny mole beneath them, accentuating his enchanting allure to the fullest. He should have been the picture of composure. Yet Gabriel's face was flushed red. Even as he tried hard to suppress it, I could see his nervousness because his fox ears and tail had popped out. I reached out to gently stroke his ears, smiling slyly. "You did so well." The faint trace of desire in Gabriel's eyes faded as he stood up, took 2 steps back, and turned away sullenly. His ears seemed to retract consciously, though he didn't seem to notice his tail still swaying proudly behind him. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. In my past life, I had seen Lola and Grant being just as intimate, and I couldn't help but feel envious. Back then, Edward was always cold, never willing to give me a smile. Suddenly, I thought of Sarah pulling Edward back with a dark expression. Although Edward has a way of making people lose themselves, I always felt that Sarah's feelings for him weren't of that nature. The relationship between the two seemed more like a forced collaboration. I didn't expect to see the reason Edward sought refuge with Sarah so soon. Sarah is the daughter of the Serpent King. She has always been proud, and few beast men survive in her hands. Edward was the only one. He even destroyed the Snake King's lair. That morning, Edward stepped into the dawn light and stood before his father. What he held in his hand was the head of the Snake King. At that moment, he turned to look at me, his eyes filled with deep affection. "Nancy, I killed him. I've avenged you." His clothes were soaked in blood, and his hands were stained red. Noticing my gaze fixed on his hands, he suddenly realized they were drenched in blood. He tried to wipe them clean, but only smeared the blood further, staining them even redder. Tears glistened in his eyes as his voice trembled slightly. "Nancy, I was lying to you before. Everything I did was for you. I know you hate me, but I truly regret it. Believe me, Nancy, I really love you." I watched coldly as Edward wallowed in self-pity. His legs were completely healed now, and upon closer inspection, he had grown noticeably taller than before. Before I could say anything, I was pulled into a firm embrace. The unfamiliar yet familiar touch made my ears burn slightly. Gabriel said in a low voice, "A beast man who would kill someone bound to him by a covenant, who would dare trust your sincerity." He pulled me back and whispered softly in my ear, "Such a disgusting scene. Let me handle it." After that, I saw Gabriel unleash unprecedented fury. It seemed he truly despised Edward. Not only did he viciously kick Edward's good leg, but he also beat him until his face was bruised and swollen. Edward didn't resist at first. He just looked at me with silent, sorrowful eyes, as if I were the one who had betrayed him. But he didn't hold out for long because Gabriel was truly going for the kill. Edward realized I really wouldn't save him, that I truly wouldn't soften my heart toward him again. He began to resist like a madman. Nancy, you must have been bewitched by this vixen, I know you love me. I was really amused by his logic. After watching for a while, I felt a bit bored and reminded Gabriel, middle foot. Upon hearing this, Gabriel immediately kicked Edward's middle foot point, causing a pained expression to appear on Edward's face. He arched his back, glaring viciously at Gabriel before shifting his gaze to me. Gnashing his teeth, he spat, Nancy double exclamation mark. I really misjudged you. I took a step back. I'd seen that look on his face once before, on the way Sarah carried him back. I had no time to dodge when I saw a bamboo leaf fly from Edward's hand, heading straight for my neck. I instinctively bent down, but still got grazed. Gabriel's eyes darkened as he caught the bamboo leaf barehanded and drove it into Edward's neck. Edward's widened eyes seemed to express nothing but agony and resentment. I suddenly and unexpectedly recalled my past life. Back then, I was just like him. I never easily trusted people, but my father said that beast men were lifelong comrades and lovers whom I could believe in unconditionally. I believed it, but no one told me what to do when a beast man despises you. After Edward's death, he transformed into a small wolf, and the snake bones on his legs fell off piece by piece, returning to their original form. Father watched everything unfold, and when he finally saw the snake bones on Edward's legs, he smiled. My son Spencer is truly destined for greatness. Lola, who arrived late, only saw her father's smile. Lola glared at me with eyes full of hatred. Father patted my shoulder, smiling with great satisfaction. You remind me of my younger self. When it comes to matters of love, cut ties decisively when needed. Only personal achievements will never betray you. Spencer, you will surely become the saintess. I suddenly laughed, looking at my father and Lola's identical faces. So you killed that fox spirit. When Lola was little, it wasn't noticeable, but these past few years, she's been looking more and more like me. Others just say that after being with me for so long, she's started to resemble me a bit, but in truth, her features bore a striking resemblance to our father's. I scoffed coldly. Our mother had died in childbirth the year I was born, and Lola was merely half a year younger than me. Cutting ties decisively was simply to avoid trouble from a lowly fox spirit seeking retribution. Lola looked at her father in disbelief. Impossible, impossible. She shook her head, then glared at me viciously. You must be lying. You're the one who deserves to die the most. If it weren't for you, I would have become the saintess long ago. Lola's voice trembled as she staggered, nearly falling, and Grant caught her in his arms. Leaning against Grant's chest with tear-filled eyes, she said, I was actually very happy. Even without a father, Mother always came home late. But she would bring me new little things from outside every day, and she would also tell me about my father. Father lowered his head, turned his eyes away, and stopped looking at her. Lola is tired, take her back to her room. I watched as the man, who had always been a dominant figure, seemed to age many years in an instant. He murmured, her mother was also a beautiful white fox. They were once very happy too. But he couldn't ruin his own image. He was the perfect husband, the perfect father to their children, so, he left her. If it had ended there, she wouldn't have died. But fate played a cruel trick. She became pregnant with his child. For a woman, love is always harder to let go of, especially when there's a child of her own flesh and blood. She secretly gave birth to that child, who was very beautiful, with the only flaw being that they looked too much like him, so he recognized the child at a glance. What kind of emotions must he have felt when he killed her? Lola didn't understand when she was young, but what kind of person could even have a damaged spiritual root? It was simply his fear. He was afraid that Lola might possess even the slightest resemblance to him. Carrying the little fish from the room, I finally left this place behind. Neither the divine maiden nor the saintly maiden was what I desired. All I ever wanted was the fleeting glimpse of freedom I had seen many years ago. The little fish had once told me of the splendid landscapes and vibrant human life beyond these walls, all things I had never seen before. I want to taste the candied hawthorns she mentioned, and I also want to see the snow-capped mountains she described. My luggage was light, so I walked quickly, but soon I discovered a problem. I was hungry but had no money to buy food. Sister, do you want to eat this? A familiar voice sounded behind me, but there was an inexplicable undertone in it. Gabriel stood in the crowd, his hair tied up in a high ponytail that fluttered in the air. The corners of his lips curled up as sunlight danced on his strands. He wore an emerald green robe, standing as tall and straight as a pine tree. Later, there was always someone behind me, often smiling with eyes curved like crescents. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.